Okay, good morning to all of you. I hope that you are doing very well. My name is Elisa Blanda, and I'm the officer of the Small Programs Donations in Marfund. And today we're going to have the webinar with the Cayos Cochinos Foundation. Welcome. The title of this webinar is Water Quality in Cayos Cochinos, Results and Lessons Learned. We are going to have simultaneous interpretation for the English language if you need it. Please do click on the interpretation logo. If you need English language, choose that language. And if you want to listen only to this language, please click on mute original audio. We have some basic rules for the webinar today. Please, we know that we encourage a space learning and respect. Always have your microphones and cameras turned up. We think that you write your name, full name, your organization, and your country in the chat. And from now, you can start asking your questions in the chat. We ask that you limit your questions to the topics being discussed, and the questions will be forwarded to the speaker and answered at the end of the presentation. If you are hearing us from Facebook, you can still ask your questions on the comment section of this webinar. We remind you that the opinions expressed today are the sole responsibility of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the opinion or position of Marfund. Today we are going to have Fernanda, Felix, and Ronald, and I'm going to allow them to present themselves. Please, if you can turn on your cameras and one by one, tell us a little bit about yourselves and what you do and where you work. Okay, good morning. It is a pleasure. Thank you for joining us today in this webinar. My name is Fernanda Valladares. I am a biologist, and I work in the research and monitoring component of the Cayos Cochinos Foundation, where we also have the water quality monitoring. It is a pleasure. Felix? Today, hello, good morning. Thank you for this space. I am Felix Martinez. I am a biologist. I work also for the Cayos Cochinos Foundation in the monitoring and research component. It is a pleasure to meet you all. Ronald, good morning to all of you. Thank you for joining us in this webinar. My name is Ronald Castellon. I work in the National University of Honduras, and I am currently the coordinator of the marine field operations. And then since 2022, I have been collaborating with Cayos Cochinos Foundation in water quality, and well, I'm excited about all the work that's left to do. Thank you all. We remind you that Marvin has a mechanism for a grievance mechanisms. If you want to comment, these are the 2 QR codes in Spanish or in English, and you can take a picture for any complaint or comment that you would like to give us. And we give the space for our colleagues in Cayos Cochinos for their presentation. We remind all of you, if you can please write in the chat your full name, the country where you work, and who you are so that we know who is joining us today, as well as with the questions that you might need to answer, so that we can answer them at the end of the presentation. So, okay, Fernanda, the floor is yours. Anything you need, I'm right here. Okay, you can hear me correctly? Yes, we can hear you. Thank you. So, and thank you again. It is a pleasure to be here, and thank you for joining us today. We are going to be sharing the results and our lessons learned in the implementation of this project of water quality monitoring that is being carried out in the Cayos Cochinos Archipelago Marine Monument. It is important to highlight that this monitoring has been the work constructed with the support of MARFund and the collaboration of UNAM, the Atlantida campus, and the Cayos Cochinos Foundation. So the name of our project is to implement a monitoring program of water quality in the Cayos Cochinos Marine Monument to improve reef conservation. So to begin, we can go to the next slide. I'm going to very briefly talk to you about our study site where we work. We are in the north of Honduras, and Cayos Cochinos is in the Islas de la Bahía state in the municipality of Roatan. And this is the map where the monument is located. The part that is shown in orange is our macro zone, our buffer macro zone, where we have our influence communities in this lower part, and the central macro zone, which you can see in green. This is where we have two communities, and where we also take the data for the water quality monitoring. Next one. So, as a general objective of the project, we want to promote the improvements in the Cayos Cochinos Archipelago Marine Monument regarding reef conservation in the lower basin in 4 of our influence rivers. We know that Cayos Cochinos is not only doesn't only have these 4 river outlets that have influence in this area, but to begin, since we didn't really have a baseline first in water quality, and having into account that the water quality monitoring can be a little bit expensive and require a lot of logistics, we started only with these 4 rivers. Next one. And so to achieve this objective that I commented, we had a series of activities. As objective number 1, it was the implementation of water quality monitoring program in the buffer and basin zones in the central area during 2023 to 2025. For this, we had various activities to carry out. One of them, and the main one, was acquiring all the equipment for these monitoring sessions. We bought everything that we needed to be able to carry out this monitoring because, as I mentioned before, we didn't have, these monitorings weren't being carried out. So now we have already all of our equipment, our sonars, our data taking organs, and not only that, but also to carry out all the water quality analysis, ex situ and in situ. Another one of the activities was to elaborate a monitoring plan, pilot monitoring plan. And why is this activity in the same time? Because we carried out a site recognition, because in our monitoring plan, we needed to first do this recognition to know how many sites we're going to include in our monitoring and what sites we're going to choose. And as a result of this, we chose 11 monitoring sites, 7 on the reef site and 4 in the river outlets. Here we defined the field routes to be carried out strategically, to determine how many trips we were going to need, how we were going to move around and get this transportation, and all of this cold chain that we needed to keep all the samples from the collection sites to the laboratories. So part of what we needed to include in our monitoring plan is all the checklists of the materials and the sites to carry out our monitoring, all the checklists that we needed to be able to carry out monitoring properly, and include all the little details that we needed to take into account, and all the recommendations that we had thought about before our sample taking in the field. Here, the images that you see here were taken during this recognition tour, because we needed to be able to know how we were going to arrive to each of the sites. What you see up here in River Esteban and River Balfate, in one of them, for example, we have to walk where we can leave our vehicle around 1 kilometer until where we need to take the samples. So, and in Balfate River, you don't really have to walk that much, but we do need to know what specific zone was the most recommended zone to be able to carry out the sampling. And the picture below is the river outlet of the last river that is located in the Nueva Armenia community, and is one of the closest to the natural protected area. And as you can see, just so that you can go a little bit more into the subject, it is a place where there is a plantation of African palm right by the river. And to carry out the next activity, which was actually to do the bi-monthly sample taken in the center, in the buffer, in the lower basins of the influence zones. And to be able to carry out these monitorings, we also documented this in our monitoring plan, was everything related to the safeguards, not only of the technicians that were carrying out the sampling, but also the people that were always with us. Because in Cayos Cochinos, to be able to take the samples, we needed to be using, we need to follow certain conditions about the captain and all the people on the boat. So here you can see how we took the samples with all the necessary protection, using your gloves, always labeling all of the samples. Then the picture in the middle is the taking of the data in the rivers. Here is where we didn't really need to move in a boat, but we did need to go into the water. And this is why we need to follow the personal protection equipment, in this case, the suit that protects the whole body from the water. And we processed a total of 512 samples distributed between all the river outlets. In these is 176, and in the marine area, it was close to 329 samples that were processed, that were going towards the different laboratories to be analyzed. We can go to the next one. So that you can know where we are working, the 4 sites of the river outlets are in the lower part of the map. You can see in the 4 colored squares. First is the Cangrejal River, the red one. It is located in Ceiba. This one was chosen because the city of Ceiba is one of the biggest, it's a very big city, and is the closest city that to us. So that's why we thought that it was very important to take. to have the data of this site. In green, we have Papaloteca River. It's one of the closest ones to the marine monument. And then the orange square is Balfate River. And the last one is Esteban River. And here we see the map of the conservation values of the marine monument, in which we find all of the sites, all of the monitoring sites that we're going to mention a little bit further on, that were taken in the marine site that, remember, were 7. So here you can see all the green dots, which is where we carried out the sampling. And now I will leave you with Ronald. So he can explain a little bit more about the chemical and biological sample processing in the lab. Okay, so regarding the sample processing, they were carried out in the lab in the Atlantida campus. You can see the picture of Dr. Ana Rivera, that is collaborator of this project. Here we were able to process all of the bacteria part and the sediments part, the suspended sediment part, and the nitrates and phosphates in like the nutrient section. Okay, here we have into account the different water quality index of marine coastal waters. That it's an initiative from the Institute of Research of Marine Coastal Environments, the INVEMAR in Colombia. I'm going to remove my camera because my Wi-Fi is not very strong. I apologize for this. And this is an indicator that summarizes with qualifications the quality of the water quality in a very simple way. So if the water is in adequate conditions, especially for flora and the fauna, this index has 8 key variables, which is dissolved oxygens, nitrates. I can't hear him. I'm sorry, I can't hear any sound. I think we lost him for a little bit. He's explaining the table, talking about how they come from optimal all the way to bad or critical. In summary, practically, the ICAM allows you to interpret the data and analyze and get results if there are impacts about contamination. Can you hear me? Yes, it got cut a little bit because of the internet, I think. Maybe if you can repeat very shortly. I don't know when I finished in the parameters. Okay, let's go back. I was just saying that there are 8 variables that are taking into account dissolved oxygen, pH, nitrates, phosphates, nutrients, suspended solids, and the chemical demand of oxygen, and thermotolerant coliforms, and hydrocarbons. These last ones in the estuaries changes a little bit, where we talk about chlorophyll A, and where we have numbers from 0 to 100, from optimal to bad. Yes, thank you. That was excellent. So the results that we had of this index in the river sites where we took data, we have generally unfavorable water quality conditions, dominating bad and inadequate categories. that goes from 25 to, oh, there's like sorry, um, from 25 to 50, throughout all of the 4 monitorings that we carried out from November in April, August, and February of 2025 that we were able to take, trying to take both dry and rainy season. So we were able to identify critical indicators in the river outlets. The most marked conditions are the points 1, 2, and 3. There is a point where the dissolved oxygen goes very, very low, possibly because of the decay and decomposition of the system, which is very bad for the aquatic organisms. In the thermotolerant coliforms, we can see an increase. Oh, we are losing his audio again. Okay, he's back. Yeah, you got cut a little bit when you talked about thermotolerant coliforms. If you can repeat again? Yes, please. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. In this graph, you can see the changes in a very significant increase in Papaloteca River and Cangrejal River, evidencing direct impact from residual waters that can influence these data. We have some assumptions that we have that it might be driven because of discharge waters, but we're not completely sure that this is the case. So we need to find direct cause and effect so that we can know what is causing this. Regarding pH, we can see quite a lot of changes, especially in Esteban River and Papaloteca, where you can see quite a lot of changes regarding photosynthetic processes and the production of organic material, which you can see with the sensibility of the system to the changes that basically are derived from chemical and biological changes. Regarding achlorophyll, we can see this basically indicates the productivity of algae. You can see that there's a big decrease in Balfate River and the Cangrejal River, where there is a lot of nutrients available that may favor the production of chlorophyll. In the case of nutrients, both nitrates and phosphates, we also see quite a lot of fluctuation that you can see in Balfate River and Papaloteca River, where you can see a constant enrichment of the sites that are also related, of course, to the production of chlorophyll, which I mentioned before, that are related because that affects the production of these components. That can also have an effect or be affected by the changes in pH and other variables that we monitor. And okay, so taking into account the marine areas, most sites are in the bad categories. Sadly, the reality of the data taken, places like Roatan Bank and Timon, had some temporary small improvements, but quickly returned to bad conditions. In Playa Uno and Playa Pelícanos, they were fairly constant bad categories. We have to clear that we did not take into account in this study the currents, the marine currents. And this would be interesting so that we know how the waters are moving. Even the scientific station, which was a reference site, also presented critical values, which raises concerns about the constant contamination in these sites. We were also able to identify some critical indicators like the thermotolerant coliforms, because you can see abrupt increases in, for example, the monitoring 2, where we can see fecal contamination that can be, again, attributed to the rains or discharges. And this, again, after a while, ends up diluting itself in with the rest of the ocean, which you can see it's like a temporary kind of event, but not a constant kind of. And in turbidity, even though it maintains quite low, you can see that it coincides with the races in thermotolerant coliforms. There is more turbidity, so there is a lot of organic material, and so you can see the relationship between. Okay, and in the case of nutrients, our Caribbean is not very rich in nutrients because the lower waters are not really moving. But for example, in the case of nitrates, we see a very evident pattern that you can see everything raising. That possibly comes from agriculture activities, eroded substrates, in that we have a lot in the area. And again, having to do with the organic material that is input into the rivers. And with phosphates, it's complementary to nitrates. And there's a more generalized increase at the end of the monitoring by February, showing and supporting that enrichment of the nutrients in the water and increasing the primary productivity of the area. So in general, the whole system is presenting a lot of stress. Okay, continuing. Okay, now we're gonna have Felix. His microphone is on mute. So he was speaking, but we couldn't hear him. Sorry. Okay, thank you, Roland. So with the objective number 2 of our project was to talk about the reef health index in the same sites where we were taking these water quality monitorings in 2023, and we were able to relate the physical chemical water parameters with the key health index of the reef. And you might ask yourself why we chose these sites. We chose them because these are where we have higher coral colony cover, and we have very susceptible colony species that are susceptible to SCTLD disease, and these are of an important zone for tourism and fishing. So this is why we chose them, and this is why we so we were monitoring different health index, including the presence of disease. It's important to highlight that this objective number 2, because we can tell how the nutrients, turbidity, and the organic matter influences the coral cover, the presence of the increase in macroalgae cover, and the susceptibility for disease. And this is why between the activities we have to evaluate the health of the reef to be able to know the relationship between water quality. And the way that we monitor this is by using the AGRA methodology. This monitoring was carried out in 2023, and these monitorings were carried out in all of these sites. So it was carried out in 13 sites, out of which 7 are part of this project in particular. So sites like Playa Pelícanos, Playa Uno, and other sites. And we implemented the 3 blocks that are fish, coral, and benthos. we can see that the bad water quality, as we saw with nitrates and phosphates, is directly affecting these results because these nutrients are favoring the overgrowth of macroalgae and they are reducing the coral cover. Other than that, we see that it also affects the biomass of fish. In the table, we can see that there's a slight improvement from 2018. The presence of this contaminant affects the whole relationship between reefs and how they behave. Okay, so these are the sites: Caballeros, Punta Pelícanos, Playa Pelícanos, Punta Uno, Scientific Station, and Cayo Menor. Next, please. Another activity is monitoring monthly for the SCTLD disease. We were carrying out with the methodology determined by AGRA, in which every month in every site, we were free swimming for 30 minutes. In this transects, we analyze healthy colonies, bleached colonies, and the presence not only of SCTLD, but other diseases as well. Every month, we were registering data for around 300 to 500 colonies. Something very important about these continuous monitorings, is that we were able to see how the disease got to a climax of expansion and then a decline from May 2023 to December 2023. This is where we had the climax in more affected colonies, where this is the time where we saw an increase of the disease, getting to around 30% of the colonies affected by the disease. From January 2024 to July 2025, it was kind of like the second phase. There was like a stabilization of the disease. And this suggests that maybe all the susceptible species were already affected during the initial phase, and then from the beginning of 2024 and all of 2025, we see very low predominance of the disease. We now see it only from 3 to 12% presence in the coral population. So this decline indicates that the intensity was lost and the susceptible species were already affected, and now only the more resistant species were left. The most affected species was Dendrogyra cylindris, that had 100% mortality of the species in the sites, followed by Copophilia natans, Orbicella favulatia, and Orbicella annilaris, and Pseudodiploris strigosa. And the increase of the disease also had to do with the quality of water that was established as bad. So we can see that the water quality does increase or affect the susceptibility of corals to different diseases. Next, please. Another activity was evaluate the presence of bleaching and black band disease in the 7 sites defined for the project. So during this activity, we were able to see that there is there is a lot of bleaching presence, because out of the total of colonies evaluated, the 61% had bleaching, 25% were pale, and only 14% were healthy or did not register bleaching or paling. So, of course, there was a big impact of thermal stress on the colonies. And regarding black band disease, we weren't. There wasn't a significant presence of the black band disease, more than what we expected or naturally saw, that we can relate to the water quality parameters established. And with the bleaching, we mostly saw acroporas and orbicellas being affected. We see species, for example, like Porides. We had a lower levels of effect on these species. So even though bleaching is not necessarily directly related to water quality parameters, it most definitely has some sort of effect on stress, because nitrates, phosphates, sediments were in the water, and they remained in the water for quite a long time. And this combination of factors limits the way that corals can recover from different stresses, and the way they recover from thermal stress. Okay, gracias, Felix. Thank you, Felix. I don't know if you can hear me properly. Yes, we can hear you very well, Fernanda. Thank you, Felix and Ronan. Okay, so to continue, we just want to highlight what Felix and Ronald were saying. If we can see from the results of ICAM, both regarding SCTOD and bleaching, we see that there's a situation that reflects a constant pressure on the reefs that according to our data, might be a stress factor. And now going towards the third objective, where we talk about designing an action plan, a participative action plan from 2023 to 2025 that incorporates all the management guidelines for reef conservation. So since we had quite a lot of activities, first we carried out community engagement activities in the image that you can see in the screen. This was at the beginning of the project, where we told everyone about our project, where we had different community representatives of the 6 communities in the influence zones, and in the direct area of Cayos Cochinos. There were also government entities and non-government entities, all with the objective to inform and share information about the project, to show them what we were going to be doing, and give them the opportunity to express any recommendations regarding the sites, or any suggestions, so that we could take those into account. One of the results that we had from this activity was we had also the presence of the community in the different monitorings, because sometimes we needed to use boats, and we needed to have a captain, a helper in the boat. And this was the moment where we could engage with the community and have them be part of these efforts. Always before the monitorings, the community leader, because in general, there's always one person that represents the communities that is chosen by the community itself. We would always let them know that we were going to be carrying out these efforts. And if they wanted to come, we, of course, gave them that opportunity. And in that first recognition activity, we did have the presence of those community leaders that came with us and were the ones that told us which sites they recommended as better options to carry out our monitoring. Next one. Another one of the activities is gathering information with the UMAs, which are the environmental units from Ceiba, Jutiapa, and Dalfate, which are the municipal units that have influence in natural protected areas because they are located in the influence communities of the area. So what was the objective of this? It was a very rich environment because it was the community leaders and with the local authorities. And the objective of these local authorities is to be that link between central authorities and the community. So we had a lot of topics that were hard for some of them. For example, like pollution, river pollution. But the first activity that we can see in this picture, where you have a lot of yellow papers on the floor, was a meeting that gave start to the gathering of this information about all the different socioeconomic activities that are carried out in the area. And also we had different activities in this meeting to see where we could strengthen the local communities and how this was going to be useful for them and for the project. Then we have an online workshop to present the water quality monitoring results and the reef health data as well, involving all the stakeholders and users of the protected areas. We had the opportunity to have this. We were able to have this workshop be in person. And this committee, the Committee of Marine Landscape, that is made by different government institutions and NGOs and the academy and research groups and other community groups. So this committee was created by the society that we make part of the 5 partners, that is called Marine Landscape, that is made up of 3 protected areas and other NGOs. To mention them, the protected areas are Cayos Cochinos Foundation, Coray Salado, and Islas de la Bahía. And SEM is also a part of it, and Ecotour, and international partner, which is Fauna and Flora. Why is this important? Because since we are all working together in other projects, in this opportunity, we had participants both from our influence area, where we are developing the project, as well as other areas. And there was a lot of interest to start replicating the water quality monitoring plans in other marine protected areas and in other places. Even if they were not marine protected areas, they showed interest to carry out these monitoring plans. We gave them guidelines on who they could talk to be able to start implementing these projects with water quality assessments. The last activity, to be like already towards the end of the project, there was a participative workshop for designing management strategies for influence zones that would help us elaborate this action plan. This was carried out in February of this year. And we also had the participation of the environmental units of the marine landscape. The objective of this workshop was first to gather. We had already given that first approach, but now we had all of the other stakeholders and actors together to be able to create these strategies to continue carrying out the monitoring, water quality monitoring. I would like to highlight that several of the topics that we discussed, since there were community representatives, we were able to identify the necessity that once the community had given those opportunities to be a part of these spaces, and they started to see the results of our studies, they were looking to be involved more deeply. So one of the results of this workshop was the design of more than 20 strategies, 20 proposals, focused always on the conservation of the reef and the management of river basins. Maybe if we can go to the next slide. And for the final creation of the full document that was made with the authorities and the water committees that were also part of all of this process, we had to prioritize strategies more than actions that were key, that were hand in hand with what we were working with the project. So there were 3 strategies that were prioritized and that were established in this document and in this action plan. I would like to highlight that this process was very participative, very inclusive, and it allowed to identify these strategies that were suggested, and they were described in this action plan as strategies that were focused a lot on the river basins and strategies that were also focused a lot on the conservation of the reef. Mostly, these strategies are focused on the reduction of the impact, because what we saw on our interviews, it was a lot regarding solid waste, water waste management, and of course, all regarding the river outlets and river basins. And of course, related to what Felix and Ronald spoke about. And of course, like with any other project, there's always challenges, but most of all, lessons learned. So for us, the biggest lessons learned from this project, the main one is that we were thinking about how to integrate the community and institutional connectivity, because once the communities were understanding the data and they were being part of these workshops, they wanted to be more and more part of it, and they were more responsible and felt that commitment to the management of their resources. I'd like to highlight that during one of these workshops, there was a specific question that they were asking. Since there were members from other communities where there's other river basins that also have influence in the natural protected area, when they saw how the project was moving forward, they were always asking if there is opportunity to add more areas, to add more river basins, to be part of the study. So you could see that there was a lot of interest, that they were wanting to be more part of it, and they wanted to have more communities be involved. Another lesson is that the monitoring is possible, but it requires a very robust logistics, very detailed logistic, from the sample taking to how you're going to transfer these samples, always following this cold coordinating very, very precisely, which is what leads to the third point of having a flexible and adaptive plan. Because of course, there's many challenges. The weather might be a challenge, some delays on how we were able to get the equipment from some providers that were not national. And these variables had that we needed to adapt. And thanks to the team being very flexible and adapting, we still were able to accomplish the objectives, and we didn't compromise neither the technical quality or the safety of our people. Another thing that we found was that all continuous monitoring and long-term monitoring is crucial to really understand real trends and anticipate to risks. A lot of things that the people in the workshops were telling us is that to be able to make decisions, you need to have the information. And again, the participation of the community, they always wanted to be part of it and they wanted to help out in whatever way. This project also strengthened a lot of learning, both social and environmental knowledge, and many communities were part of this, and they were able to share their day-to-day experience with the data that we were collecting. And another situation, when we had participation with other institutions, what we noticed is that the challenge is not the lack of interest, but the lack of coordination and clarity in the responsibilities and roles of each of the people. Because when we needed to prioritize, we needed to talk to all of the people. We needed to find who was in charge and who had the responsibility of managing and handling each of the strategies. And then, of course, the strengthening of our capacities, technical capacities of the foundation. Of course, the presence of the university strengthened all of this experience in the marine monitoring protocols, in the management of the equipment. And this is an incredible lesson learned. We were able to gather all this expertise and all the knowledge that we were able to get. And I think this is all from us. Thank you so much. And thank you. Thank you so much to all of you. Thank you for all of this information so that we can continue working to understand these variables around the Mesoamerican Reef and the role of the communities and the different organizations and the stakeholders it's fundamental for the strengthening of all the activities for natural protected area management. So thank you very, very much to the three of you. I think we have like 5 minutes for questions. Let me see. I think we have some of them. I'm just going to leave here. If you haven't seen some of our webinars or the start of this webinar, you can find them at the website, in the Marfan's website. And please follow us on our social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and this other one I can't remember. Help me. I'm not very good with this. Liz Carla. Blue Sky.
Yes, Blue Sky.
Thank you. Yes, Blue Sky. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. And we're gonna read some questions. There are a couple of questions. Fernanda, Felix, and Ronald, if you can put your emails on the chat, if there is another participant that wants to contact you directly, Or if you leave the comments on our Facebook, we can also we can also share those questions with the speakers. Okay. So we have a question from Mayra Nunes. Thank you very much. These results are very, very interesting, and congratulations for this amazing work. My first question is, what could be happening in some of the sites that in dry seasons we see high phosphates? Did you carry out any analysis to link the results of water quality with agra data and SCTLD? And the third one is if you recommend analyzing some of the variables separately to identify possible sources of contamination. Yes, excellent question. Thank you, Myra. Okay, so we can't there regarding your first question, it might be related to different hydrological phenomena. It can be related to the temperature. The high levels of phosphates may also be related to, as I mentioned in the presentation, we don't have precise data on water currents. We could have currents that come from the coast, even though the distance is a little bit is around. Even though Cayos Cochinos is a little bit far away, there's still the possibility that there's going to be runoff effect from land. Regarding your second question, we still haven't done the comparison between water quality. We worked with Inbemar and we were trying to establish these indexes, and it was relatively easy to implement and carry it out because they have a lot of data both in the Pacific and the Atlantic, and we try to implement it for this study. I know that Coral Reef also has their indexes, and other organizations in the MAR are also working with water quality. But so far, we don't have a comparison between these indexes. And we are going to try not only seeing it all together, but also trying to identify the causes of the results that we have. The thermal stress, deforestation, and the agricultural activities that are present around the zone. There are a lot of agricultural practices that might not be the best and might be affecting our water quality. Thank you very much, Ronald. Very complete answer. Excellent. I will ask all of the participants, since we are already finishing, if you can see in the chat a link to be able to answer our feedback so that we can improve these learning spaces and to be able to share information and share experiences with all of you. We would thank you very, very much if you can answer this Google Forms. We have another question. Sergio asks if the action plan can be shared with all of us. Fernanda, I think maybe it would be important to put the Cayos Cochinos webpage so that when it's ready, we can all access these documents that are very, very important. Because as you said in the presentation, having a space and having the information as a baseline to be able to replicate these actions and all of these monitoring efforts along the Mesoamerican Reef. And one last question. I think after that we're out of time. But if you have more questions, you can write directly to Fernanda, Felix, or Ronald, or in our communication channels. With pleasure, we will be able to address all your questions. Thank you, Felix, for the Cayos Cochinos webpage. And Claudia has the last question first, she congratulates you on the excellent work. And then she asks, is there a commitment from the municipalities to continue these samplings and these monitoring? Hello. Thanks, Elisa. Thanks, Claudia. Well, from all of these workshops, we were able to. We know that the agendas of the government and the municipalities are very, very hard. But we were able to have a forum with residual water and wastewater, with other strategies regarding the natural protected area. And we have a municipality of New Armenia with whom we are getting very close. And we have established, we have a follow-up meeting to see how they are involving young Garifuna regarding water quality and reforestation. So we have a meeting with them to be able to have more solid plans. We see that they are doing quite a lot, especially in the workshops that we had. We could see that they are working and they are interested in working, and we have a good way to follow. And just a little bit, Elisa, about what Maida asked. Yes, when we evaluated the development of the ecom, we thought that it was a good index to be able to evaluate and more than evaluate, interpret the quality, water quality in the marine environments. But yes, we were in conversation with short conversation with Coral, because it would be good to have different strategies and implement how we can integrate other indexes that might be a little bit more focused. For example, like eutrophication of water. We have this very accelerated process of eutrophication in the coast, and it's very, very common, especially in the river basins towards our zone. So, an index of contamination of coastal marine environments with nutrients. So yeah, we are trying to see how we can link with other more specific indicators for future collaborations. Thank you very much, Fernanda. Thank you, Maida. Thank you to everyone that had any questions and to everyone that participated. I think it's time to say goodbye today. We are always here. Those indications of the plan that you proposed for mitigation strategies, and we're going to continue working on these action plans to be able to improve the state of the reef. And that's always going to be our main challenge, to improve the water quality for the reef. And I think that all of you are always available for any sort of collaboration and follow-up and sharing of these information that you have been working in the project for all of these years. So thank you very much for all of you, for all of the time and this space, and for the work that you do on a day-to-day basis. We want to wish you all Merry Christmas and good vacations, and have a lovely 2026. With this webinar series, we're gonna see in 2026. We're gonna continue in January, and well, follow us on our social networks. And if you can, please remember to fill out the feedback survey so that we can always continue improving. It was a pleasure having you, Fernanda, Felix, and Ronald. and we hope to have you again further along. Thank you. Thank you to all of you.